Hey, Sajay.
Hello. Hi, Nisha.
Hello, hello.
Okay, I'll throw a link to the agenda in the chat. Could the person who is identified as smiley face emoji identify themselves?
Sorry.
Ah,
Hey.
Okay, no worries. Just been a lot of Zoom bombs over the last few years, Josh.
I think you mean white rectangle.
Yes.
Sorry to trigger those who have gone through with that.
No worries. Just something to keep in mind. As long as you identify yourself, I'm fine with that. But if you lurk with your screen off, you could be subject to booting. Okay. The artist formerly known as Josh Stiletsky is now goes by a smiley face. It's changed to a symbol, following in Prince's footsteps. Okay, shall we kick it off?
let's do it.
Do it. Okay, hello and welcome to the OCI reference types working group. Today is Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. Hello and welcome. And I've just placed a link to the Google Doc where we're logging attendance. If you could add your name there, it'd be very much appreciated. And then we will ask for the honorary position of, is there anybody who would like to be note taker for this meeting? Going once.
I can take notes.
Okay. Anybody else back up, just because I see you as having a few agenda items here, Nisha. So I think probably just separation of concerns might be good, so you don't have to represent and type the notes at the same time.
Josh can take over for user stories if he wants to.
I do want to.
Okay, go for it. I'll take notes then.
Okay, please place your name in the note taker place. And if there are any silver medalists and bronze medalists who can help just to add any backup. I know last week my internet died mid meeting and I was note taker. So I appreciate Brandon, I believe it was, who stepped up and took some very good notes. I feel like you were one of those legal clerks in the courtroom that typed the whole transcript out, because you're a very good note taker.
He's got the books behind him to make it look like it.
Yeah, and he actually he's on a typewriter, so he's a GDoc enabled typewriter. Okay, so excellent. Is there anything before we go into the agenda items? So if you have anything to add, please add it to the agenda. There's a room there, and if we can get to it, we will in the time that we have today. See, we're just a little decorum. We're using hands up. So raising your hands either physically or in software to indicate that you have a question, and we'll try and speak to the right order that the hands were raised. So in that spirit, I see that Josh or smiley face emoji. Not sure if you're still going by Josh. So
you can call me whatever you like. My hand did not mean to be raised there. I was offering to take notes. Nisha, I didn't know what she meant by that. If you want to drive the user story talk, you can do that. I meant I could take notes while you're talking. But...
And I jump in taking notes. I can do either one. Josh, I thought you said that you wanted to, so I said, okay, I'll take notes.
Right. I think we understand the confusion. I can do it. Okay. So
let's get into it. Josh, you have the floor.
Okay. So a few weeks ago, we went through the user stories and everyone was providing them. And I think end of last week, the thing on the agenda that we talked about is there a way for us to capture these and distill them? And Jason was, I think 2 weeks ago, we were going through these and making notes and deduplicating things. So I'm trying to recall where we left off. I think
we made it to that line that says we made it here. Scroll up half screen. Middle of your screen.
We made it to here. Okay. All right. I guess if someone doesn't have a better idea, we can just walk through each of these. And I don't know, Jason was doing a really great job. So, but basically walk through these and see if they can be collapsed into a distilled topic or duplicated or reworded in some way. Steve Lasker, as a user, I want to view the top level container images in a registry through tags, but only see the references as a selected detail.
I feel like I missed something last week. Is this where I'm supposed to say something about it, or just that's the topic for anybody to discuss?
I think we're just opening it up for anybody that might be confused as to what it might say. I think this is similar to the one that I'd had, and I probably have mine down later, where it's we don't want to have the clutter of a whole bunch of tags for other things showing up.
Yeah, last week we only really talked about the governance process and doc writing and sharing and discussion topics. But from 2 weeks ago, we sort of went through these and tried to cluster them, and Josh did a great job of clustering. For this one, I think it is worth mentioning that this is more of a cosmetic issue that a UI can paper over, not necessarily that we must put that work onto the UI, because there are many UIs and you know the UI resources are constrained basically everywhere. But being able to filter out tags is possible to solve by a UI or a CLI that filters, or an API that filters by default tags that match this format. Ideally, we wouldn't have to, but I don't want to constrain our solution space by overly specifying our problem space.
I mean, you could absolutely put the filter. I mean, it's very easy to use the lipstick pick conversation on that. I think this is just one of the places that you want to be able, the pattern kind of surfaces, whether it's, I want to manage life cycle, others. So yeah, this is just teasing out that one particular item. That yes, if this was the only last thing, you could fix this in the UX. I think you have to kind of also think about the scalability of this also. This is one of the things that I've just been seeing us struggle a little bit on. It's one thing when the tag was used just to represent a signature, when we're trying to represent attestations and security scan results and adherence to policies and a whole bunch of other things. I think it stretches the challenge, it stretches the issue.
Lucky has his hand up.
Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, Josh, just, yeah, for everything that's highlighted, maybe just scroll to the right and see what we had there. I think Nisha's comment was very similar to Jason's.
Yeah, or I think, I mean, like to abstract away even that abstraction, we're talking about filtering and default filtering, right? Like, is it possible to hit an API endpoint that returns only, you know, quote unquote, actual tags? I'm making finger quotes, but you can't see me. And then a, you know, URL parameter that says no, show me everything equals true, which shows you all of the other stuff. That is another way to implement this, where like it abstracts away the UI aspect of it, and selection and query is just sort of a filter, which is applied by default, and then you can remove that filter if you want.
Sorry, how do we capture other things where tags are the mechanism, the unit of communication? Whether it be, you know, events, I want to be careful not to call it webhooks, but eventing. There are other things where the tag is meant to represent a specific thing. So I'm trying to figure out how to balance the simplicity of, yeah, let's put a filter on the tag, a regex on the tag, as opposed to, there is a general pattern for how tags are represented and used across the ecosystem. And I don't want to hang up on just this one. I'm just, this is one of those that gets interesting on, is it overly simplified or is it the tip of the iceberg?
Lucky, you still have your hand up, or Sanjay?
I just say capture the notes that maybe this could be handled in the UI, and there's that question, and then just keep going. That would be my, because
Yeah,
this is
I'm
gonna, we're gonna get into
trying to figure out
solutioneering.
how, I'm trying to figure out how we can go through this list effectively. Like, should we?
I think
for each of these
is
items-
it clearly communicated? Like, do people have any questions about what the ask is? And then we can decide on those things. And well, we're still in the collating, and then deciding on whether this will be a use case that we accept would have to come later. I'd accept, but I'd propose. But for now, let's just collate and go through quickly. And are there any questions about what this use case is saying that Steve has? Sounds like everybody understands what it is. And then, you know, if Brandon has one, we collapse them into one, and then later we make a decision as to how we're going to treat it. That would be my suggestion.
I guess my question to your suggestion is, what is our goal? Is our goal so that we all understand this list, or is it so that we have an output to put into the repo as actual requirements today?
If I was to answer your question back to me, is I would hope that we could get a list that everybody, that represents what everybody's input is, and collate and dedupe anything, then group them, then determine each one whether we would say, yes, this is an accepted use case that we're going to address or not, and either put them in the appropriate place in that doc.
I guess like, okay, let me try to like better frame what I'm saying. I think we have like these several stories, right? And how do we know before we have the boxes or the buckets, what we're gonna do with them? Or are we gonna throw them in a trash bucket? Like, I think, do we wanna spend time creating the buckets for the requirements versus going through them? Or I just feel awkward that I'm sharing my screen and I'm not sure what the goal is. Isha, do you want to? Isha?
Yeah, so I would actually agree with Lucky over here. It might be we'd be able to make a decision on whether we want, well, I mean, it's a process thing. So I think going through them gives us all a chance to think about some larger patterns. So for example, this after Steve had explained about what he meant by like a selection, we all decided, okay, that means filtering, and that could easily fall under like a category of management, or image management, or reference management, or tag management. But in general, that can fall under management. So we can only get that if we go through all of the user stories quickly.
Okay. All right.
I was just going to say, Josh, it might be worth just prefixing everyone we've looked at with a general theme so we can make collation. So if this is like query filtering or querying, at least then when we come back to it, we can start deduping and then bucketing, because I like the buckets you've done, Josh. But I think let's synthesize a list that we all understand, and then we can start to pick and choose which ones are in it, which group. That would be my suggestion, Josh, but I'm but one opinion.
That sounds good. I'll continue going that route. If anyone else wants to like add notes as we're going through each item, go ahead. But I'll try to capture this like theme idea. Okay, Steve Lasker, as a registry operator, wants to help users understand how they can manage the life cycle of their container images and their references. Theme management.
So this one, I guess, Steve, you're going to not only that a reference could be deleted, but that it has been deleted in a certain situation.
Yes, I mean, it's basically we talked about this being an option, but and there's a default and then there's a configuration. If I delete the container image, by default, I probably want all the signatures and scan references and other things to go with it. If I want to archive that, I can, but I want to make sure that the unit that I deal with, it's kind of like if I deleted files from my operating system, I don't want the operating system to keep track in some other metabase of which are read-only attributes, which were, various policies assigned to those files. That should go as a unit. So
and are you looking to solve that with reference types, or do you just want to have the capability to solve that as a registry side using reference types?
So I realized this from the previous conversation of like, Jason and I started debating different ways to solve it, and rather than try to solve it, do we understand the problem? So here it's just a matter of there has been discussions around which should be client problems versus can a registry know about it? So the concept here is registries don't need to know about the specific types. There's a generalized pattern that it can see relationships. And if users delete the root, then the dangling relationships have the option to go with it. So it's really around lifecycle management on how the registry can understand a graph without knowing the specific type. So yeah, we've done things around the artifact type and the subject and so forth that enable it, but I'm not trying to jump to solutions. This is literally, how do I enable our users to be able to manage the content in their registry and not wind up with zombied objects?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to solve it here either. And sorry, Jason, I see you put your hand up and I should have done the same myself.
No worries, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not looking to solve it. I just want to make sure we clarify that when we come out with our solutions, I don't think any solution is going to solve this because nothing on OCI does lifecycle. But as long as we give you the tools to do it yourself, I think we might have solved this for your use case.
So the example here would be manifest point to blobs. So while
I'd say move it, Steve, just move along.
okay,
Otherwise,
long- yeah,
otherwise
as
we're
long as
going to
we
burn an
capture that.
hour in one. I just think let's get the theme and the guidance here, and then we can discuss later. So is it content management guidance? That's what Sajay put in the chat. Sorry to interrupt, but we can't spend 20 minutes on each one.
Yeah, maybe we go through the person who wrote it, explains it for a moment, and then somebody propose a theme. If you think that it's a different theme, speak up and we argue.
I only think explanation is required if people think they need it. Otherwise, if it's self-explanatory. So if you need an explanation, ask, and then let's bucket it.
I agree with the theme. Are we just going through and assigning themes to everything as in a lightning round, or there's no discussion? I'm fine with that too. I have discussion if we have discussion on the table.
I'm fine with that too. Jason's hands up.
Yeah,
I think we should get a better list. I think we should get a more succinct list of the represent and dedupe and then have discussion.
sounds good.
That would be my preference, Jason, but
I am all for filtering the topics and then discussing them. That sounds totally fine.
Cool. Okay, Steve Lasker, as a registry operator, wants to provide tag locking features that don't preclude users from adding signatures or SBOMs to a tagged artifact.
I feel like this is the first one that actually might need a little more explanation, but does this make sense to folks? And this is more of when we think about ways to solve some of the problems this would make this one more difficult. In other words, do we stick an index in the middle to have the tag mapped to other things? This is what I'm trying to say is we have certain registries, I don't think it's just us, have tag locking features that basically says a tag is locked to a digest and can't be changed. So as we evaluate solutions, can we enable that scenario? Or even though that's not defined in the OCI specs, that is something that a bunch of us have done. Do we unwind that with a proposed solution? So do we want to maintain this capability, mutability of a tag, if you will?
So
I
do
think
you mean? Oh, sorry to jump in. Okay, I'm sorry. Sajay has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the theme aligns with the reference type working group, because we seem to be discussing about tags. I would say we should probably like call out how this feature would be used by references rather than limiting or like defining the use case is not clear as far as I read it right now. But I understand the purpose. So what is the theme here is still something that we cannot bucket at this point is what I'm getting out of this.
Is it content management in the sense that users have a way of managing their content and we want to maintain that ability?
So it seems to me that the specific use case you're talking about is immutable tags. Making a tag immutable or not. And that sounds like content management to me, or lifecycle management to me. But that's whether we should think about it when we're making proposals is another matter. So let's just bucket it and move forward.
In fact, that'd be fine if you retitled it Immutable Tags. If that helps others.
put it in content management and ship it. That's what I've heard the most of.
like putting code comments in the. Steve Lasker, as an artifact author, I want to use multiple blobs/layers for reference types.
Any questions on that one?
No, I'm wondering what you would consider that. Like, I'm wondering if there's a theme of like image spec manifest changes or manifest modifications, because it doesn't
Yeah, it's
seem
basically
like
don't break what we already have. Like the OCI artifact stuff allows me to push things to a registry with multiple blobs.
Artifact schema, artifact schema.
that's a great that's a great combination of words. Anyone disagree? Okay. Steve
Sorry, I had
Lasker,
sorry, I
I'm
had
sorry,
my
I'm
hand
not
up.
looking, I'm like looking at a different screen, but just speak
Yeah,
up.
I'm going back and forth as well. Sorry. So I fail to understand why we're talking about layers here. Does it matter?
The concept is should reference types be limited to not support multiple layers, which is what the image spec does today. That's one of the great flexibilities of a registry. So this is more of just making sure that we are capturing that we don't constrain reference types beyond what the schemas already support.
Okay, so does that mean like backwards compatibility? Or sounds like it, maybe? Or is it like I don't know. That's how I'm seeing it, is like it's a maintaining backwards compatibility.
When you say compatibility, I'm not trying to think right. I think of it more as capability.
So there are many situations where the blobs and the layers are not necessarily being used, but separate manifests like point to other manifests. I don't know. Like some people may be using blobs and some people may not be using blobs. Is it something?
I wonder
it
if
more?
the next item might answer your question, Nisha.
Okay, then I'll move forward.
Yeah, I'm not trying to cut you off. I just think it might answer your question.
Yeah, I maybe ask the question after the next one that's highlighted. And this is kind of the opposite that says, hey, I just want to push an annotation. We can call it an attestation. There's a bunch of debate around whether attestations, claims, and so forth. But the idea is I want to be able to push a name value pair to the registry as a reference to the other thing with no additional blob data, because the annotation can carry enough information. And that is also a reference type. This is something that the image spec doesn't support today. We've done in the ORA's artifact spec. Yeah. So it's another example. So one is to Nisha's point. The one above it was, hey, today manifest support multiple blobs, and I can use it for deduping. I can use it for parallel downloads. I can use it for I only need one of the blobs and not the other, depending on the scenario. The next one says I don't need blobs at all. The annotations is enough.
So this combination says some people are going to have artifacts with layers and blobs, and some people won't. So we have both of them covered.
Okay.
I like artifact schema. Keep going. What would be my suggestion? Nisha, I don't know if you have, I see your hand up.
I'm sorry, I thought I put it down. I was going to say compatibility, but artifact schema is fine.
All right, another one from Steve Lasker. As a security admin, I want to assure non-container artifacts pushed to a registry doesn't add security risks to container runtime services that may pool the reference type. Looks like, did we talk about this, Jason, or?
Jason might have just be deduping here. So Brandon.
Yeah,
go,
from
Jason.
before, I mean, from 2 weeks ago or whatever, when we started writing this doc, I just took a pass through and tried to dedupe or cluster them as dupes as well as I could. This is not an authoritative dupe signal if other people disagree.
Yeah, those two might not be a dupe, and all of mine will be later, so we can go ahead and cover Steve's now.
I mean, I think this is the historic debate over the OCI artifacts versus everything's a container image thing. It's like if every file doesn't have an extension, does an application know how to do a quick checksum? Should I even open that file? You know, should a container runtime even download something that has a media type that does not equal a container runtime image? That's really kind of what this one's about. Sure, people can spoof things anything they want. I can put random stuff in a JPEG, you know, but is there a pre-gate that and that same thing is used for other areas also. So it's just an example of one of them. However, I've just tried to capture it in a way that we've been discussing for a couple of years now.
So I think I bolded are not affected from Brandon's thing, which we'll bring up later, but I think maybe the way to look at this is these changes could have negative effects, and one of them is security. So your thing is specifically about the security aspect, but I think if I'm like looking under the hood, this is an upgrade path or backwards compatibility, backwards availability promise, right?
I'll go backward compatibility with security.
Promise is a strong word, so it's yeah.
What's a strong word?
Promise, because like there is no promise, right? It's a hint. At the end of the day, I can stick a container image media type in there if I want. The idea is there even infrastructure? Maybe is there infrastructure that allows me to do the right thing and not overly put burden on runtimes or any artifact type? Like the Helm CLI shouldn't be confused when it tries to pull a.
I'm starting to play the walk off the stage music, Steve. Sajay has his hand up.
I think this is artifact schema. When we define the schema, it should be secure. It should go through SDL and all that stuff. I don't think these are. They would probably collapse into the same theme if you can move on to the next one and theme it that way, or if there's any other recommendation, please let's go with that.
Any dissenting view on artifact schema?
I'm going to still push for backward compatibility just because I know a couple of them coming up for myself are going to be backward compatibility ones, and they might be nice to have them all lumped together.
Are they all in the context of security, or is it different context?
Not security.
Okay, so then let's just put backwards compatibility then.
Okay. Steve, as a container image author, I want to support promotion of container images and the references across registries that may not yet support references. And there was another duplicate from Brandon's. As a user, I would like graceful degradation if the registry does not support the new ref types.
Is that backwards compat too?
Yeah, that's backwards compat, and those are definite dupes.
I think the thing that the healthy thing that came out of the various conversations was round tripping of data is probably like in this long list of discussions, what is the thing we're really trying to protect? No data loss, because it's round tripping, it's not just fallback.
Okay, sounds like everybody understands that one.
Okay. As a security scanner product, I want to know the type of each artifact so I know how to scan it for vulnerabilities. And then another dupe, as a user, I would like to know the type of each artifact without pulling each artifact separately.
Is that artifact schema?
Plus
I think
one.
it was a querying filtering.
Yeah, I would say filtering.
Yeah, but it'd be filtering based off the schema. I don't know. You can put it in either or. I think
Yeah, we
Tiernan
can have
said.
both.
I like filtering.
Is that
And
what
if
we had for
somebody-
that first section? Was like, I just was conscious of how many buckets we're creating here. Is that what Steve's first filtering, was it called query filtering? What was the bucket you put that in, Josh?
Querying filtering was the first
Querying
one.
filtering,
Yeah.
okay. So is it fit in there?
I'm wondering if someone can volunteer to start like simultaneously writing this portion and pulling things that we decide on into these, so that, you know, in the next call ends in 25 minutes, maybe we can have.
Josh,
something
I'll
with
commit
PR.
time after this to clean it all up for
Okay.
however long it takes. So I think just stay on target while we got everybody on the line.
Perfect.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm just, if somebody,
If anybody wants to do it, sure. But yeah, I'm single threaded. I can't do two things at once.
okay. Yeah, if anyone wants to only partially listen and not, okay. Nisha, as a user, I want to identify the most updated artifact in a registry. Filtering?
+1.
I thought that would be content management, but filtering is fine.
I'm focusing on the word identify. I think if you said, like, I want to do something with that.
I want to use the most recent.
Well, that's still, that's still not managing it, but-
Okay, fine. Keep theme as filtering is fine.
Okay, next, Nisha, as a user, I would like to be able to map monotonically increasing product versions to container images, so I have an idea of deployment progression.
I think this is content. Well, first of all, do folks understand what this is?
I think so.
Okay, then I would say this is content management.
All right.
A second.
As a developer / DevOpser, I like that word, I would like to bisect builds based on container images I have deployed.
Yeah, that's also content management, I think.
Can
How
we
does that
dig into-
relate to reference types? Sorry, go Brandon.
No, I think we're both probably asking the same question. I just want to understand this a little better.
Maybe this is more of a filtering thing. Basically, I want to be able to find the container image that I deployed yesterday and the container image that I deployed today, and see if there's any difference between the two of them.
Does this go along with the monotonically increasing version so you can find the midpoint?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, this one was me. As a user, I want to store images in one registries and signatures, SBOMs, attestations in a separate registry. Does anyone want to
So
bucket
basically
this for me?
schema to, is this kind of like the loose references thing where it's just a part of the schema that says whether it is here or it's got an ID?
Yeah, it could be artifact schema if we need to store that linkage.
Mhm.
It
Content
sounds like the
management.
separating identity from location. Basically, I'm thinking you're saying you want to identify this thing signs a thing, it's not here. When you figure out where it is, that's fine, but you've made a definitive link to it. It's just not tied to a location.
Yes. But I guess like
This-
this isn't anything to do with management, right? This is just, I want to upload one thing here and one thing here and make sure I can link them. So
We've spoken about this like detached references as we want to think about it. Like you have in the manifest, you can actually have blobs coming from different places. So I think the schema can take a requirement saying that you want to be able to support a schema that can store images here. Team seems okay. If that's good enough to kind of like start with and roll it into the scheme as a requirement for the scheme to support these things.
okay, that sounds good to me. Brandon, and by the way, if we're running into Brandon's dupes, then please someone stop me. As an artifact producer, I want to be able to create multiple artifacts referring to the same manifest and upload them separately.
So one
Kind of the
signature, one
last one.
SBOM. It's
Kind of
like
the last
uploading
one.
a signature, uploading a SBOM separately. This is kind of more like a baseline of anything. So theme, artifact, schema, I would say.
Okay. Brandon is an artifact producer. I'd like to push multiple artifacts concurrently, possibly from separate systems without encountering race conditions.
It's going to be server side. Is that going to get into content management?
From the themes that we've already said, which I think is 4 right now, or 3? 4, backwards compat. I would say management, unless there's a new theme for that.
I don't know how to, it's like the underlying, don't break the system. There's kind of
Yep.
like this underlying infrastructure thing.
Yeah, I think we should bucket these a little bit more later. There's management server side and management via client. But I think this is okay for now. I'm just seeing the hands now. Lockie, do you have?
I was just going to say the only thing to call out there, that is there any impetus on the container image itself existing first, or do you want to push everything at the same time and establish references afterwards? Let's say you land a signature and then you land a container image and then you link them. So can a signature not reference a container image and exist in the registry? Was what I was just wondering about that. In the multiple artifacts concurrently.
My thought behind that is probably not. Probably the image will be up there first, but someone could always stretch this different way.
That's my interpretation, that the image would always be there and that'd be your point of reference. But the way you worded it, I didn't know if artifacts meant container image as well. I see Jason has his hand up.
I have a use case for wanting to push a signature before the image that it is signing. And that's that I want to enforce a policy perhaps that my registry disallows unsigned images. And so the only way to achieve that is to push the signature and then push the image. There is no time at which the image exists before the signature. I think the way that we solve this is the signature points to the image that is signed by digest. There's no validation in the registry that that digest exists, just that like I am a signature for digest ABC. And then when image ABC exists, the world is right and everyone's happy. But that doesn't require me to push a signature, a free floating, sort of like unreferencing signature, and then the thing it references, and then update it to point to the thing. We just say, I sign digest ABC. ABC doesn't have to exist for me to exist. And then when ABC exists, everything's happy.
Works for me. Sounds
Thanks,
like content
Jason.
management. Other questions?
I think, Brendan, there's 2 parts. One, just to go in reverse order, I think there's another ways to approach that is there's this quarantine pattern thing. So I think capturing the root requirement of we're trying to make sure there's no unsigned artifacts in the registry is a good category. because there's other ways to think about it, just like with most of these. But the other one, I think, Brendan, what you're trying to capture was, again, kind of just making sure that solutions around doing an update to an index as multiple things are being pushed, that there's this one index that gets updated to capture all of those. And that's where we had the concurrency locking issue. So I think that's what you were really trying to poke at. Is that accurate?
That's the concern I had. I'm just not trying to solve it here. I'm just trying to make sure that whatever we create handles this.
I mean, some of these came out of, we've all been experimenting trying to get things into a registry without much changes, and they had some side effects. So I think that one just is more of capturing a workaround. The side effect of a workaround doesn't break the system.
Well, we put it in management.
Second that.
Let's go. Keep going.
All right.
Okay.
Want me to read? As an artifact producer, I would like to be able to push an artifact to the registry associated with another manifest and not need to tag that artifact. So this is kind of going back to probably a little bit of a duplicate above of trying to avoid the tag clutter. Mostly a UI thing. So filtering.
Steve, you have your hand up.
Sorry, didn't bring it down.
All right.
All right.
Brandon, you want to go ahead again?
Yeah, as an artifact producer, I want to be able to push an artifact to a registry with a tag so that it can be pulled directly in addition to having references to other manifests in the registry. So this is the inverse of above. So I don't know if that's just backward compatibility so that we can tag it if we want to, or does that just fall under, I don't know if we really have a box for this one.
Yeah, when I read that, I kind of go back to the backwards compat one from the pushing to registries without reference types. But
Okay.
I would put backwards compat, but that's just
Okay.
how I'm reading it.
Works for me. As an artifact producer, I would like an efficient way to update an existing artifact with a newer version. So this kind of gets into some of those, a little bit into those versioning ones we were talking about before. So
Content
content management. Yeah.
You could probably, yeah, we can dedupe later, but it sounds very similar to Nisha's.
Yeah. I went through all of mine, not looking at anything else anybody else wrote. So I will have a lot of dupes in mine.
And that was the goal, Brandon, just to go through and
Yep.
put out what you had in mind, and then we can
Yep.
dedupe. So this is fine.
As an artifact producer, pushing an artifact to one repository should not impact the associated artifact list on a copy of a manifest previously created in another repository on the same registry. This is backward compatibility / security, I think, going to some of Steve's concerns earlier.
Just time check, Josh, we have coming up on 10 minutes left. How many more of these do we have? Because we have one other agenda item. I haven't checked if anything else come in.
Looks like about 10 of them. So should I just read fast?
Let's see if we can get them done.
Okay.
1 minute each.
One thing I would like to say about the one item is that could be left to next meeting. That'll also
Okay.
give folks time to look at it and comment on the.
Okay,
PR.
I'll mention it verbally towards the end. So you're okay with us using the remainder of the time for this, Nisha?
Yep.
Thank you.
And Josh is right here. I think we might be able to get them even faster because I'm agreeing with a bunch of them. As a tool writer, I'm looking to be able to query these things efficiently and picking specific artifacts by type. I think that one's probably a duplicate from before. Let's see, being able to identify when a registry doesn't support the APIs. That I'm going to call backward compatibility. So I'm going to flip this one over to backward compatibility.
I'm sorry about that. I saw identify and was.
Yep, no problem. As a tool writer, want to be able to include reference types within the image layout file system. So this one probably breaks everybody's idea of everything we are doing. If I push something that has reference types to the file system format that OCI has for the image layout, how do I push the reference types with it? Content management or backward compatibility? Or do we say we just don't care about those crazy users that are doing things on the file system? I'm going to lean toward content management. Any other opinions? Questions?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So the same content would be on the file system as well as.
There is a file system format for pushing images to the file system and storing it. Same format that's used by various other OCI compatible tools. And all the registry API stuff we're thinking of is API specs for querying registries. How do you take that same logic and put it into that file system format?
Sounds like backwards compat.
Yeah, for now, I think so. We'll figure it out. Okay, as a tool writer, I would like to be able to perform a server-side blob mount when copying large artifacts between repositories. That should just be handled by all the registry APIs, so backward compat. Basically, make sure the new APIs don't break the existing features we've already got. And as a user, I would like to be able to walk the CAS tree in reverse. This one's getting a little crazy. So basically, I would like to be able to query all manifests pointing to a blob digest or all manifest lists that are pointing to a manifest digest. Effectively, this takes whatever we're thinking of for the reference types and pumps it up a notch. So I don't know if we want to even be able to do that, but I'm throwing it out there in case people agree, and then that would be awesome if we do. If this gets lost on the cutting board later on, that's fine too.
I think this is a great requirement because if you know a blob or a layer that has a vulnerability, you can query back every image and things like that. I think that's kind of where you might be leading to with this, right?
It is, and there's also a lot of people pushing stuff into an OCI index, and then what indexes point to that thing, go in reverse and find all the different stuff that points to it. There's some interesting use cases there.
The only thing I would say, Brandon, is you probably want to put moonwalk and then remove in reverse. You want to be able to moonwalk the CAS tree. Sorry, I have Michael Jackson moonwalking in my mind across the CAS tree.
I like it.
So Brendan, thanks for clarifying that. You're actually looking at not just one level up, but like multi-level, right? That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, to be able to go up the whole tree.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to keep reading and I'll go back and I might retheme a couple of these when we jump to niches here in a minute. So as a registry operator, I want attempts to push an artifact to an older registry to have minimal impact. This was a dupe of one of Steve's earlier. So I just don't want to break garbage collection. I don't want to break any of the other things going on out there. So that's kind of backward compat. All right.
You just put dupe under there, Josh. So when I clean this up, thanks.
Nisha, you want to do the last 2, 3?
Yeah, so these 3 were after I spoke to the TUF community about what they would like to see. So assurances that any OCI object really did come from a supplier, the claim supplier. So this may be artifact schema, but it could also be under content management. I don't know. Then the second one is as a so the other one is the reverse part. So if I am an object supplier, I want to be able to put assurances, provide assurances along with the object that it is coming from me. same thing. The other one seems to be content management, because I also want to say that I have used other objects from other registries, reused other objects from other registries that come from someone else, like different suppliers. Does that make sense? It's all under like basically checking provenance. Okay, so I guess we're done.
Yeah, so Laki, you said you want to run through this list. Do we want to give people time to look at this? Brandon said he wants to maybe change some, but yeah, and also we should consider, so once we do have these in the buckets, it doesn't mean that we all agree that that's the requirements, right? So how should we go about for each of these, like gaining consensus?
Can I throw an idea out? I didn't raise my hand, but my leaning is to not try to gain consensus at this point, but just to try to capture, we've got a whole bunch of different competing interests. People are going to want to go different directions. And so we've captured a lot of our ideas. Let's go ahead and look at potential solutions after we do any filtering, reformatting, collating of what we've already put down. And then start looking at how what we're proposing solves these different questions, build a grid or whatever we need to do to start putting that together. Because different people are going to put different emphasis on different items here. So rather than us trying to solve what's the most important item across all these things now and getting consensus there, get consensus later once we compare all the different solutions and say, okay, which solution does everybody really like?
I think we can be very strategic with this language in the repo that's like, these were provided by the members of the working group. It does not mean that all of these will be like addressed by the final output, but that this is a reflection of what we all wanted. So I think if we bucket these, I don't know if should we keep the name attached to them, and then I have a PR that I can close and we can replace with the bucketing. Go ahead.
Sorry, go Brandon.
I was going to say, maybe a real fast way to go through this is to say, are there any things on this list that we've gone through that people are really opposed to being included as a potential thing we're comparing to our solutions against? Not saying a solution has to solve it, just saying that we want to compare it against them. That moves us forward quick. If everybody says, yeah, go ahead. We've got a list.
Okay, so with the final 2 minutes, I'll take what we did today. I'll put it in the Google Doc and I'll bucket them under the areas they already are. People can have a week to change, add, move, and change. I will grab your branch, Josh, and then PR to your branch and then push that up, and we could just co-author the stuff. And then we can push that up, and then what do we think the next best steps are for next week and moving forward? Is it to identify any? It doesn't sound like there's any contentious ones at the moment, but I don't know if that's going to change. Or do we go through each of the ones that are in that finalized list and then start to, add some more detail to exactly what the use case is? Or how do we want to break that up? Or use these as a way to rationalize the existing proposals that are out there and actually say, as you said, Brandon, here's a matrix. This meets this requirement. This does not. This meets this requirement. This does not. We only have 30 seconds. So you might have to park it. You got like 30 seconds. Go, Nisha. And then we might have to just say we're breaking it out into chat.
Yeah. Okay. So what about the ice cream people?
Yes.
So
I was going to ask that too.
So we convert all these use cases into ice cream cases.
I
Next
don't
steps.
think personally that that's a good use of time, but it depends what you mean, I think.
Okay, I'll wait. We'll wait until there is a conflict and then we'll convert it into ice cream people.
I'm in favor of what you're saying, Lucky, to start going through and looking at some of the solutions and then starting to grid it.
Okay, so I'll, before the next meeting, and I'll do this right now, Josh, is bucket them all, let you know in chat. And then if everybody's in agreement, I'll give everybody till the end of the week and then I'll PR them up through your PR, Josh. And then we can start to look at a grid and rationalize the proposals that currently are there as to whether they do or do not meet these requirements that we've created. Sound good? And then we nickel and dime over the things that we need to, and then leave everything else as we have rough consensus based on these use cases.
Sounds like a plan.
Coolio, I'll see you all in the chat. Thank you very much. And Josh, really appreciate you leading this. There was one other item in the agenda. Nisha's put up a governance doc. If people have time this week to actually go and comment on that PR, that would be very great. Thank you all for your time and sorry for going over 2 minutes. Have a great
No
day.
worries.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye, all.
Josh. Thanks, Nisha.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.